Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for the Giro d'Italia that keeps on giving stage 17 of the Giro from San Michele all'Adige to Bormio, very famous finishing region that's hosted the Giro a number of times, 155 kilometers long this stage, and it's the quote-unquote easiest of the high mountain stages we have this week. We have the Passo del Tonale, which comes after 50 k's rather of false flat uphill on a highway. That's 15 k's at 6%, a little bit harder at the beginning, a long false flat descent, and then the Passo del Mortirolo, 12.7 k's, 7.6%. It's the easier side and bigger road for the first 10 k's, and then the last 2.5 k's are quite difficult, over 10%, very narrow, before a technical descent off the back. The side maybe you're familiar with them coming up. They go down the steeper, more narrow technical side, a false flat uphill, stepping all the way to Le Motte, which is the final climb, category 3, 3Ks, 8%, before a stepped descent, pedaling descent into a very technical finish in Bormio. This episode is brought to you by Pillar Performance. Benji, any news pre-stage, some abandonnement, or no?
Ooh, abandonnement after yesterday. That's a very good question.
I
didn't notice any before the start, except for, Milan Fritin and Paul Magnier, which I'm pretty sure that was yesterday already. So I'm looking at the wrong results page. The DNSs this morning were 0 riders. So that's amazing. 2 riders did step off the bike during the stage, really early in the stage, actually. And it's a sad day for your country, my friend, because both Luke Plapp and Jay Vine have exited the building today. But like you said, Juan Ayuso started the race, and we were not sure what he was going to do today, whether he would start, whether he would play a role for the team, whether he would be able to, whether his injury is still affecting him, etc., whether that's the reason that he had trouble yesterday. Big questions about Ayuso, but about many riders, for example. Del Toro, was he going to be able to strike back on a stage which on paper is the easier of the 4? It's still a very hard stage. It's still not an easy stage. It's still quite a few altitude meters, about 3,900, if I recall correctly, which the Mortirolo is a hard climb. This is not the hardest climb of the Mortirolo. But the question mark is, what happens after that Mortirolo? And that's what plays a role in breakaway formation in a stage like this. But Patrick, I saw a picture this morning of you sitting, chilling in a pool with break formation standing there on the side. You're looking at break formation from your pool setup. I'm sorry, but I want to hear your take on break formation. How much of it did you see through the wet eyes you had?
I saw all of it. I had good internet, mobile data connection on my iPhone propped up, and yeah, I saw big breaks going and no one really controlling. It was a big break was going to go. UAE don't see after yesterday they weren't going to be bossing the front of the peloton. In fact, they wanted to be in the breakaway with Vine or McNulty, particularly McNulty, and then EF. Are they going to take it upon themselves to really control exactly who goes in? Visma were doing the opposite. They tried to put half their team in the breakaway today. So it wasn't really that it was controlled, which is why it took a while to form. It was more just every team needed to be in there. And eventually almost every team was in there. We had a 35-man breakaway with satellite riders galore. Every relevant GC team had a satellite rider. Danny Martinez for Red Bull, maybe just more for the stage. Eulalio for Bahrain. Steinhauser.
3 riders for Red Bull, actually. Also, Tratnik and Aliotti. I'm not sure about the third one. And then Visma Lease Bike had 4 of them, including Kelderman, Kruiswijk, Lemon, and another 4th rider. But we talk about all these satellite riders, about Ren Stork maybe being there for Storen, Milesi maybe being there for Rubio, and Steinhauser maybe being there for Carapaz. You already said it. Eulalio being in there for Caruso. The decision has been made. It's for Caruso. That being said, there's one man in there, Brandon McNulty. And that rider before the stage, I don't know if he's going in the break for self-interest, for satellite rider behavior. Based on what I've seen before today, my assumption was he's going into the break for himself. What was your opinion?
I think, maybe just to go for the stage, but also, as a satellite rider, and we saw later that he could play that role. I think they just needed to have someone in the break, and Micah and Yates can't go on the break because they're like the best, most reliable climbing domestiques.
Yeah.
Vine, there was an issue. He abandons this race, as you said. So, yeah, he's not going to go in. And then Arietta, it's either Arietta or McNulty then. Ayuso was struggling at the back. He's still not finished. He did start the stage, but he wasn't able to. Yeah, he was in the gruppetto today, let alone getting in the breakaway. So for Visma, clearly they want to get satellite riders ahead for Simon Yates because there's no Sepp Kuss here. There's no Vingegaard of 2019 Vuelta. There's no like pure climber. So you need riders around La Motte or after Mortirolo because it's a long false flat or hilly drag before La Motte. It's like 20 Ks. 23 Ks, and you need teammates around you there. If you're isolated, you could have big problems. Do you mention Ugo Ull for Israel?
I did not mention Ugo Ull in this break for Israel, but he's potentially saddle rider for Derek G as well. So large breakaway. We're going towards the Tonale climb, but we got to talk about the reaction here because if McNulty's in this breakaway, McNulty means UAE won't pace. If UAE won't pace, then Visma Leasebike and EF might pace. But EF and Visma want their satellite riders to get over the Mortirolo, so they won't pace. Because they want the gap to be large enough, but they also don't want the gap to be too large for McNulty to take Maglia Rosa. Who then ends up pacing if you go through that entire process?
Polti visited Malta, and I think they... Maybe it was partially punishment pacing, partially worried about McNulty leapfrogging Piganzoli in GC, and also the third is that they needed a satellite rider in that breakaway for the reason I mentioned. What if Piganzoli is 20 seconds behind in that valley, and we saw that today, he had no satellite rider, and it was curtains for him. So, yeah, they paced that whole Tonale, which made the breakaway... Because otherwise, I think...
I think Patrick's gone, but I will continue. Basically, this team, Polti Visit Malta, was making it very hard for the breakaway to sustain the gap that the breakaway had, because it went up to like 3 minutes 30 for a bit, and that gap went up to maybe 3 minutes 40, 3 minutes 50, but Polti was pacing quite a bit. And to be honest, who was the last Polti rider, Patrick? Because I see you popping back up on my screen. Was that Tonelli riding very fast, reducing the group to 40 riders, 30 riders?
I don't know. This was. I was in the pool for break formation. This was now sauna time. So, to be honest, I didn't care which Polti rider it was. Pietrobon maybe.
That's just rude.
Polti are good, but I mean, they could have chilled out a little bit. Like they didn't need to keep it at 3 minutes. I guess they didn't. Yeah, they didn't want McNulty getting free time, and that was kind of the problem with the McNulty side. Yeah, him being in GC is that, like we said, yeah, he can go on the break now, but now that GC is kind of formed and there's a hierarchy, it's not Visma that will control him or EF. They're not going to spend a single second doing that. It's Polti, Tudor, these teams defending with their life their top 10 or top 15 on GC. So, but that's the thing. In the back end of Grand Tours, there's almost always, someone has a reason to pace in a group. Almost always.
Exactly. And like this breakaway was large. We saw it reducing because if you see the peloton speeding up, you see that the breakaway will also have to speed up. And that makes it a little bit harder for the breakaway group to stay together with 38 riders, because riders start dropping. The Tratniks of the world, the Plumbers are now in between the two groups. The difference is between this stage and maybe a stage of yesterday, it's Tonali and then Mortirolo within like a span of 50 kilometers, which means if you're a satellite rider, you don't need 10 minutes to get over Tonale and then make it over Mortirolo. If you have 4 minutes and you're a very good rider and not necessarily a storming peloton behind you, you might be able to make that. But what do we want to talk about today, Patrick?
As I said, today's episode is brought to you by Pillar Performance. You've heard us mention them a few times this Giro, and for good reason. They're not just another supplement company. Pillar Performance is a health brand developed by leading sports scientists, dietitians, in conjunction with athletes, with one clear goal: getting you to the start line in the best condition possible. Maybe you focus a lot on your training, what you're doing, what your training prescription is, but your recovery is just as important to get to the start line in the best condition possible. And their triple magnesium product, which is informed, sport certified, helps you sleep deeper, recover faster, and track the impact. You can track it with your wearable. You can see, how's my sleep being impacted by using this product. So if you want to improve your sleep, and there's studies the Pillar Performance have, go and check it out on their website. They've got it all listed there. There's studies showing the benefits of their triple magnesium. I have it with me now because I'm running on fumes a little bit. Back end of a 3rd week Grand Tour. I'm trying to have a mini break. I'm running. I'm watching the Giro. I'm sleeping in a different place. Been traveling. I have the triple magnesium product to make me sleep deeply. And I had 8 hours of beautiful Zeds last night and woke up feeling good. Had a jog this morning. So if you're serious about performance, don't just think about what happens in training. Check out pillarperformance.shop, or in North America, head to thefeed.com and use the code ROUGE, ROUGE, for 15% off your first purchase at Pillar Performance. That's pillarperformance.shop using code ROUGE for 15% off. Okay, Descent, Mortirolo, Benji, kind of nothing really happened, even on the Mortirolo. Well, I feel like even on Tonale, they were trying to work over McNulty.
Fair. That was true. There were some moves in the breakaway on Tonali, which was maybe Daniel Felipe Martinez trying something, Visma working in that group, Fortunato hard pacing, Harper taking over. Stuff was happening. It wasn't like nothing was happening there either, but it's more that, to me, it felt more that that break was gradually falling apart. It's more in the peloton that we saw some more action after Polti, where I think Ineos might have come to the front. Or am I already on the Mortirolo at that point? Where I'm on the Mortirolo, I'm on the wrong climb. I'm on the wrong climb, buddy. We're on the wrong climb. Anyway, you're right. Polti was still pacing over Tonali. It was Polti that did the entire climb. That is shocking to me. But they were definitely working over the stronger riders in that breakaway, especially McNulty. But to me, it also felt like it. At the end of the day, McNulty is still McNulty. If you try and work over McNulty, which means, hypothetically, rider, let's say Eulalio makes a little move to try and get ahead and some riders close that down, eventually McNulty will also follow that. So I'm not necessarily seeing McNulty being worked over there. I see everybody else closing gaps for McNulty instead on that climb. But anyway, we get over that climb, descent happens, you were right, and we saw Arensman dropping early on this stage. I'm pretty sure it was still at the start of the Mortirolo when Polti was still pacing, but then on the actual Mortirolo climb, 8 kilometers from the top, we see a difference in the peloton. Ineos takes over, Ineos starts pacing, and Tiberi is the one struggling. The co-leader, Caruso's previous leader, is now off the back. Caruso now has riders actually staying with him, so it's not just that. I think it was Fran Miholjevic that was staying with Tiberi, which means that, for example, Eulalio from the breakaway was still ahead. That then ended up working potentially for Caruso later in the race.
Yeah, it was him or Zambanini. Don't know where Bilbao was today. Nowhere. But yeah, it was the Eulalio, the Portuguese rider. He's a neo-professional. He has the best stage of his career so far. We already saw him in Tour Down Under and some other stages. He was really, really good throughout the year. The results don't show it, but today he was really, really outstanding, and actually it's a top 10 in a Grand Tour high mountain stage. But yeah, it was not the hardest paced Mortirolo. I actually thought the breakaway wouldn't even survive in front of Mortirolo. It started with that gap, and the gap really didn't change a lot. I know Fortunato is probably climbing just as fast, if not faster than... Yeah, I guess it makes sense. Why would Jonathan Castroviejo or Lucas Hamilton climb faster than Lorenzo Fortunato? And there's not a full train of any team cycling through riders. It's Hamilton and Castro. They're on the front for a long time, even though it does put Tiberi under pressure. UAE take over. They're again not really wanting... It's clear they're riding defensively. They ride like 3 in front. It's Micah, Yates, maybe Arietta even before them, I think. They're setting up defensive pace. This long climb with a steep section isn't the best for Del Toro, and I can't remember, did Aliotti or Tratnik wait and then they took over from UAE to increase the pace again?
basically, this is where the multi-screen and the broadcast bring issues for me. I'm looking at the multi-screen, the 4 screens that's available on, I think it was TNT that I watched it on. But there being a multi-screen like that, I then know, okay, they've got these kind of images. And then look at the broadcast, and they're showing the breakaway at the start of the steep section of the Mortirolo. And sure, I'm interested in the breakaway initially, but when the GC riders arrive there, I want to see what happens in that group. And that's when Tratnik ends up dropping back from the breakaway and doing a hard pull for Pellizzari in the GC group, when Cepeda on the right side of the road, from the rider's perspective, moves up Carapaz next to all the riders to be able to potentially do a lead out here. So clearly 2 teams had a plan to attack here. Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe and EF Education first. And we see that playing in front of us, and the broadcast, the main broadcast only switches to the GC action the second then Pellizzari actually makes a move. And it was kind of funny. Instead of just attacking, he decides to kind of go to the right side of the road, pat Tratnik on the back, or by then it was Aliotti as well, I think. I think they were both there, actually.
Yeah.
And pat Aliotti on the back, and then attack himself. He probably should have attacked straight up if he really wanted the surprise on people, but it was kind of funny to see. But the one thing I do see here is that Pellizzari's attacks are not really attacks. It's like, there's no snap to it. It's just like, I'm going to pace a bit harder at the front right now with the rest in my wheel, and that does make a difference. That does put Del Toro on a limit here visually. But the question then is, okay, what happens after Pellizzari goes off the front?
Yeah, and we see that Simon Yates and Del Toro are deep in the group. They weren't right up with the domestiques or their domestiques, particularly Del Toro. The whole climb, he was kind of at the back of the group, which was strange because Carapaz has shown himself to be the best and most aggressive climber so far this Giro d'Italia, and he gets Cepeda to put on the pace. And then you can't move up when Cepeda is doing a 2-minute all-out pull on 12-13%. And yeah, the little Trek car comes up at this time. It decides the best time to pass is on a 1-car wide road, whilst the GC riders on the steep part of Mortirolo are trying to begin attacking each other. So that Trek car, they should be, I don't know, red card. I think a yellow card's almost not. They could have crashed into a GC rider. It was terrible, and they didn't know what to do. They didn't wait. They should have just waited, because if Matthias Vacek was so desperate to win a stage and you want to get across to him, then he should have done it on a stage he could actually win, which isn't today. So chill out.
It's ridiculous. It's while the GC riders are trying to attack on a narrow road to the top of Mortirolo. It's like arguably the worst moment on the entire climb to move like this. It's ridiculous. So I would like to see a penalty for that car. Then again, we don't know what the instructions were from the commissaire towards that car. Was he told to move up? Was there any communication like that? If so, then the commissaire made a mistake at that moment. I don't know the behind the scenes at that moment, but it was ridiculously dangerous, that's for sure. But Cepeda moving up with Carapaz in the wheel, and then we expect Carapaz to make a move, and that's exactly what happens. And what do we see when it comes to the other riders? Because I already felt like Del Toro was slipping back a little bit before the Carapaz attack came. Simon Yates also was not necessarily at the front of the group, or do we see Simon Yates more as he's pacing himself like on the Alpe San Pellegrino? But then again, yesterday I didn't see that self-pacing behavior as much.
Definitely when there's the first acceleration, he's pacing himself back because he gets back quickly. The problem is it's just inefficient because there's a rider slipping back. He has to go around him. He's never in the draft. But that was all normal. Then Carapaz goes. Of course, Carapaz goes. He has Steinhauser up the road. Maybe they would have hoped for Shaw and Rafferty with Steinhauser, but they just have Steinhauser, but he still goes for it. And you never know. You've got a technical descent afterwards. And there's no... Derek G can't respond. Nor is he expected to. But Yates and Del Toro get gapped by the second group. And what's really strange to me is that Yates and Del Toro get into the same game they were in yesterday with Carapaz attacking. And I'm like, he's not on 3 minutes on GC. Why are you two scrapping each other? Well, because that's what Yates to me was doing. There's no way he maybe he can surge across, because that's what happens. Yates sits, he lets Micah pace, and Micah lets the gap out to Derek G, Rubio. They're Pellizzari. They're in a second group. And we're like, what the fuck? The pink jersey and Yates are not even able to follow Rubio and G on the Mortirolo. And then all of a sudden, Yates attacks Del Toro really hard just before the top to get across to that group. And Del Toro doesn't respond at all. He just sits there flat-footed. He leans on Micah. And then he does the same huge acceleration across to teleport across. Really strange from the both of them.
Is it maybe that they're like, oh, I don't think I can react, and then they realize I have to react because otherwise I'm not going to make it anyway? Or are they trying to get as close to the top as possible to make that move? I don't know, but they wouldn't be in that position if their legs were feeling fantastic at that moment either. So I do see a vulnerability in both Del Toro and Yates on this climb relative to Carapaz, who is literally attacking at this point. And when I talk about attacking, we're talking about a gap of maybe 17 to 20 seconds by the top, and that's maybe expanding it a bit, might have been just 15 seconds by the top. It's like, it was not an early attack on the climb. So the gap that Carapaz has built up towards the top here is not huge, which means that we're now entering the phase where we go over the top, and yes, Yates and Del Toro, they end up coming together with the other GC riders there, even though, well, two things, Patrick. We got to talk about two things. Carapaz is now off the front of the GC riders, but there's satellite riders up ahead. Steinhauser's up ahead. Daniel Felipe Martinez is up ahead. Visma Lease Bike has an entire army up ahead. A bunch of riders have riders up ahead. McNulty, Hull,
Malaysia.
Everybody has satellite riders
Florian
up ahead.
Stork. Stor's gone today, by the way.
Festival, you're right. Storer dropped and is like a minute behind at this point, according to the Tutor DS, talking to Swiss TV at that point. My question for you is, in the span of the descent of the Mortirolo, it felt to me like Pellizzari and Rubio teleported to Carapaz, or did that happen on the valley after the descent?
On the descent. So, I'm trying to piece it together. I was watching on multi-screen, it's not that big. I was watching the GC group closely.
Still in the pool?
No. Come on. Motorola, I was locked in. Let's be serious for a minute.
All wrinkled in the pool?
Yeah. The Derek G. So I'm not sure the other guys knew Yates and Del Toro were there for quite a while, because they literally came back right at the end, and those guys were pushing full, chasing Carapaz, but also because Simon Yates and Del Toro were off the back. But that means they start the descent at the back. And Bart Lemon waits on the descent and comes on at the back. And Rafael Micah gets back on at the back. And McNulty's still up the road. And so it's Derek G who was pushing, but from what I could see today, G, very strong, absolute Watts rider. But his cornering and descending is not, it's not like terrible, but it's not as good as the other GC guys. And it looks like Pellizzari goes to spank it. He was bringing the GC group across. This is a very technical descent, by the way. And at some point, he gets within like 5 seconds of Carapaz. I can't see exactly what happens, but then someone drops the wheel to him and Rubio. I don't know who exactly. Maybe it was Caruso even. And around Caruso G spot, and Rubio and Pellizzari get across to Carapaz. And then, actually, the group of Caruso and G, they start to lose a lot more time to Carapaz. So maybe it went back out again, visually, to Carapaz. Steinhauser, we see an image of him waiting. I think he waits pretty much the right moment, because he couldn't have gone faster than Carapaz in the descent, but you need him immediately in this valley floor. Immediately. And you never know what could happen. Maybe Simon Yates and Del Toro crash because they're under pressure.
But at the moment, it is looking like Carapaz is on a very difficult mission, because even with Steinhauser, he's not just pacing against UAE, which that includes Micah, that includes Adam Yates. McNulty's still ahead, by the way, at this point, so he has not fallen back yet towards Del Toro here. But on top of that, even if UAE doesn't want to ride for some reason, then Visma Lease Bike is there with multiple riders from the breakaway that have fallen back, as well as satellite riders. So those are two teams that on paper would benefit from catching Carapaz here, but it looked like Visma Lease Bike was trying to not blink first, and UAE was already blinking as fast as they could. So they were the ones actually closing it for this moment. Then we saw this chasing moment, but
although Del Toro attacked.
Exactly. Before we saw proper cooperation in the valley from UAE in that Del Toro group, Del Toro attacked that second group. I'm saying second group, the group behind Carapaz, and he got a gap. And we see, was it G reacting to that and so forth? Like, we had riders spun across the road, but that to me seems like a bit of inexperience from Del Toro. And he's done the same at the start of today's stage, actually. In break formation, there was a split of two pelotons, and instead of letting his team figure that out, he tried to attack from the second peloton to the first at the start of the stage, and those two moves seem like inexperienced to me. But the one excuse that he maybe has is McNulty was dropping back at that moment. Was the idea maybe to attack towards a dropping back McNulty?
Yeah, or get to Carapaz, and then Steinhauser would pull, and then what? Bart Lemon has to close it, and maybe he can't because
a lot of
there
wasn't.
Yeah, but they weren't there. They weren't there, right? The Kelderman wasn't there.
Okay,
Kreisler wasn't there. Not right then. And so, you know, if you feel good, you can try it. And again, I'll say this is not the same stage as yesterday. Del Toro has been excellent on flatter terrain, descents, short hills. Yeah, flat finishes and sprints, explosivity compared to all of these guys the whole race. He's been like lighting up the whole race. Mortarola, we don't know whether he was having a moment of weakness, whether he just wanted to play it like that. Who knows? But now it's his terrain. From here on out, this is his terrain. And yeah, Carapaz and Steinhauser, they get caught. Danny Felipe Martinez, Eulalio, and Kelderman are still up the road as potential satellite riders, we think, after Lamotte. But then, because then I'm thinking, okay, UAE are going to put Micah on the front. He's going to, maybe even they wait for Arietta. They're going to pace backwards. Why wouldn't they? They're going to just ride defensively. That's what they were going to do. Unfortunately for Roman Bardet ahead, Q365 hit the front with Damien Howson. The gap was 155, and it's 30 Ks to go, more or less, and they start to smash it. I don't know whether this was to put time into Barry on GC. I don't think so, because then you pace more progressively. Also, Tiberi's like gone. He loses 11 minutes today. Yeah, like forget about it. Malaysia starts to pace. I also think for Tiberi, Stora to put them in their grave for Ina Rubio's GC. But I don't understand from Q365. I'm not saying that people aren't entitled to ride their race. It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying Tom Pidcock, if you make this a GC fight on Lamotte, has a 0% chance to then win the stage. 0%.
Fact. The chance in which Pidcock could win a stage like this is from the breakaway. How many times has he been in a breakaway?
He did try today twice.
Yeah, but like, if you spend the first 2 weeks of a Grand Tour so close in GC that you can't go in the breakaway, I have less bad feeling towards a rider that then can't get into a breakaway in the last week. You would have had more options to do so in the first place if you lost more time from the beginning. Then again, on Eurosport, they were talking about, he's test driving 3 weeks of GC in advance for the Vuelta. But you think that's scope, or is that realism? Is it a realistic idea to try and go all out for GC for 21 days to think, okay, this is how my body handles it, this is how I handle it, this is how the team handles it, this is where we make mistakes, and then learn for the Vuelta? Because the Vuelta is not the same as the Giro, eh?
I mean, sure, like, why not? I mean, why can't he do what, I guess, Stora was doing?
Well, he's not as good as a climber on paper.
They're a pro team, and Stora's on a pro team, he's on a pro team, and now he's less than 2 minutes behind Stora for a top 10, so he's moved closer to the top 10. I just didn't think this was his, like, ambition.
Yep.
I thought this was the pigeonhole Ineos were supposed to have been putting him in, and maybe that's not what the problem was. Maybe the problem was they wanted him to go for GC, and then they got to the Tour de France, and then they wanted him to wait for Carlos Rodriguez on Grand Colombier. And he was like, "This is mixed messages." I don't know, but
I was mixed messages. But that being said, I would have preferred seeing him potentially fight for 2 stage wins from breakaways, etc. in this Giro from an admiring Pidcock standpoint. And I understand maybe he wants to try and win top 10 at Giro, but at the end of the day, I don't really care if he gets 10 for 9 in a Giro. Pidcock, like, he's already achieved more notable things in his career, in my personal opinion. Maybe it's a step towards greater, but I haven't seen the potential greater in that in terms of potential yet. Anyway, that being said, House and pacing reduces this breakaway gap from 130 to 45 seconds. You hinted at it a little bit. Eventually, Bardet ends up dropping the rest of the breakaway riders on the La Motte climb, the final climb of the day, which is 3 kilometers 8%. And into that climb, we see not just Q36.5 pacing, also Milesi from the breakaway ends up dropping back, pacing for Rubio. That's understandable. Rubio can pass Tiberi. Next to Tiberi, Bernal was getting in trouble on the starting points of La Motte, so any opportunity to get ahead of and closer to Bernal is also an opportunity. And I swear there's a third rider I was having in my head, Toro, because he was off the back on Mortirolo. So any pacing that Milesi can do here is already putting time into Tiberi and Storer. And then he can see Rubio if he can put any dent in Bernal on the La Motte climb. But on the La Motte climb, we saw a rider from the breakaway dropping back to set up an attack from the GC group.
Daniel Felipe Martinez, he looked much better today. He waits and he tries to launch Pellizzari. Micah, veteran move. Micah gets in between Martinez and Pellizzari in a sweeping right-hander, then lets the wheel go, then blocks Pellizzari a little bit, and then Martinez is gone. And Pellizzari is left with, do I close this gap myself? And Martinez, you don't start looking around 5 seconds after you've hit the turbo.
Yeah.
Like, it's not Martinez's fault, but they just, Micah, it was such a smart move, and it completely disrupts the Bora lead out. And
on the radio,
Pellizzari has to get on the radio. Martinez has to literally wait, and they have to restart it again. We see Simon Yates, he was all out of position. When that started to happen, he was getting chopped out of the wheels. He wanted to be on Carapaz's wheel or G's wheel. He's always going to the back of the group, then coming to the front of the group, the middle of the group, and back again. Del Toro looks good. Del Toro is now on third wheel. He looks sharp, and there's a huge attack. When Pellizzari, he sort of accelerates in the saddle, and like Benji said earlier, it's a lot different attacking GC guys who from the front who are now not giving you a free leash than when you're not marked. And today he's not given any leash. He stops eventually, and we get the huge attack, the explosive attack that we've seen a lot during this Giro d'Italia from Del Toro. Only Carapaz can follow. Yates is on G's wheel. G looks like he's closing it initially, but he can't close it. And over the top, Del Toro accelerates. The gap goes to 12, 13 seconds. And we're thinking there's no satellite riders left. Kelderman's caught and gone as one, actually.
Go ahead.
Alfonso Eulalia on Bahrain Victorious is the only rider left from the breakaway to pace for a GC rider. Bardet is like 7 seconds up the road.
My heart breaking. Can you hear it breaking? Romain Bardet riding off to, I think he's completing the trilogy, right? If he ends up winning a Giro stage as well, which is getting a Tour de France, Vuelta, and Giro stage win. I think he hasn't won a Giro stage win yet. I'm not completely sure about that.
He stole one from Vandenbroek, so I don't care.
I'm not having your bullshit here. Yeah, not having it. He didn't steal it.
He did steal
it. Frank van den Broek gave it. I'm sorry. What's given is not stolen.
Vandenbroek, do you reckon he'll ever win a Tour de France stage?
I'm not sure about that. But it was so much better for the Tour de France that Romain Bardet took that victory. I'm sorry. That's the case. And today, I was hurt when I saw Romain Bardet. Look how they massacred my boy.
He's retiring in 2 weeks.
What?
Bardet's retiring in 2 weeks. 3 weeks.
2 weeks already? Oh.
At the end of the Dauphiné.
Is it the Dauphiné is in 2 weeks already? Jesus. We get no rest.
I think so. Yeah.
Anyway. Bardet gets caught.
Yeah, it sucked. It sucked for Bardet. I agree. I wanted Bardet to win.
It's Baldy's fault. Q36.5's fault.
Milesi's fault.
It's Tonelli and Pietrobon's fault.
It's everybody's fault. And
except Bardet.
Except Romain Bardet. Maybe Lame Riser needed to pull more on the breakaway. But Del Toro goes across. And we're thinking, I thought this was coming back. It was coming down steadily. Eulalia would pull, and there was not just Simon Yates somehow convinced Rubio to pull. Very generous of him. Yates was pulling full, G was pulling full, Rubio, Caruso, not full commitment. Pellizzari wasn't pulling, Poole wasn't pulling, of course, with Bardet ahead. Not sure if he was there. But yeah, this group was working 4 guys, and Carapaz wasn't. No, he was nowhere near as strong as Del Toro. Del Toro was the one keeping this gap open. Carapaz was relaying, but Del Toro was the one making the trio up front go fast. When they catch Bardet, he gets on the back of them. And it was coming down a second. Second here, second there. It was down to 7 seconds. Visually, it looked like they were about to make the catch.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, 2 things happen, maybe even in the same corner. It's the same sweeping right-hander. Del Toro gets a gap on Carapaz off the wheel, explodes out of the corner. He's got 8 kilos on him. He is bigger and stronger than him.
And a motorbike in front of him? Or do we ignore that moment?
Yeah, Del Toro had he had the motorbike in front of him for not for when they were catching him, and also he was really close at the top of the climb. It was right in front of him. But Yates group also had a motorbike. Yeah.
Whoever's first has a motorbike in front of him. They know.
Yeah. Well, Yates group also had one, I think, for the until this part. But yeah, Yates threw that right-hander, then Del Toro has one, Yates doesn't have one. Del Toro drops Carapaz, he goes full commitment. Yates gets a gap on G. I don't think he wants this. This doesn't help Yates. But now the gap is so big, he can't just wait for G, who dropped his wheel. But then he's now pedaling sans moto against Del Toro. The gap opens up again. He starts to lose way more time to Del Toro. To Carapaz, he holds it more or less stable, I would say. And this finish is so technical. Thankfully, it was a solo rider finishing. If it was a sprint, who knows what would have happened. There was a million corners, and Del Toro wins the stage solo, 4 seconds ahead of Bardet and Carapaz, with the 10 bonies for him, 4 for Carapaz. His first Giro d'Italia stage win, his first Grand Tour stage win, and his biggest win of his career to date by far. He deserved it, to be honest. It should have probably come earlier in this Giro. There were opportunities for him to win a stage, and now he gets his just desserts in the Maglia Rosa, no less. 4 seconds ahead of Bardet and Carapaz. Simon Yates, 4th. He gets a 1 second gap on 15 seconds behind Pellizzari and G, and Caruso, Rubio, Poole on 16 seconds. That's a very good stage from Poole, actually.
It is.
He might, if he continues like that, he'll be in the top 10. Pidcock was with Bernal and McNulty. They were on 110. That's 54 seconds. That's a big gap to that group. And then next GC guys, Adam Yates worked full all out. He was on 227. Yeah, that's about all the GC relevant guys. So in terms of GC, Del Toro extends his lead on everybody. He's now 41 seconds ahead of Carapaz, who moves leapfrog Simon Yates, puts 15 seconds into him. He's now on 41 seconds. Simon Yates, 51. Derek G loses a second to Simon Yates. He's on 157. Caruso, 5th. Rock solid, 306. Bernal, 443. He lost time. Pellizzari moves closer to him in the top 5. He's on 5 minutes in 7th now. Rubio moves into 8th on 609. Adam Yates moves up despite being dropped because Toro had such a bad day. He drops 3 spots to 10th on 746. And Poole, McNulty, Pidcock are around 8 to 9 to 10 minutes.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Del Toro.
Is this a surprising comeback from Del Toro?
Ooh. Let's catch it for a second. Yesterday, Isaac Del Toro loses time, doesn't just lose time, cracks a little bit. He cracks a little bit, loses quite a bit of his feathers towards Carapaz, a minute 30, almost loses his ping jury, still has a half a minute left, roughly, after the stage, so he's got that left. He goes into today's stage, and he wins the stage. He wins the stage after what looked like to me struggling on the Mortirolo, and then moving on to better terrain after the Mortirolo, where he can make a difference. If we compare these two stages for a second, 4,700 altitude meters was yesterday's San Valentino stage, with 2 brutal climbs at the end, versus this stage where Mortirolo's basically, let's be honest about it, with, 70 kilometers to go? Roughly in the stage, I'm trying to calculate it. It tops at 50 kilometers to go. It starts at 60 kilometers to go. That is quite a bit of a recovery in the descent. It's pretty climby to La Motte, so it's not like it's a flat segment towards La Motte. La Motte's also a climb, But my personal opinion, I didn't expect him to win today's stage. That's one. But I also didn't expect him to completely crumble today yet. For me, stage 19 and 20 are the ones where I'm really wary about Del Toro. And I feel like it's more likely than not that he's going to lose the Maglia Rosa on stage 20 than it was today. Because if you look at stage 19 and 20, that's 4,000. I'm sorry, we're talking about 5,000 altitude meters basically on stage 19. The difference there is that there's 3 major climbs again. The gradients are not the craziest, so that is something, I guess, where you can look hopeful towards, but it's still 15 kilometers climbs, 16 kilometer climbs, 16 kilometers. And like the final climb after those 3 major climbs is again 10 kilometers at 5%, which that's not the craziest climb, but there's so much climbing before that the fatigue just sets in so much that I have a hard time believing Del Toro will win this Giro d'Italia. For me, it's Carapaz.
Carapaz is the favorite right now. I don't think this stage, obviously, the time gain helps Del Toro, and every second counts. If he'd taken more time before, he could have paced himself better yesterday. I think he could have won this Giro, and it's not over yet. But indeed, today the stage is under 4. It's 4 hours. It's hard, of course. But yesterday is another hour and a half longer, mountaintop finish, and way harder climbs.
But stage 19, it is only 170 kilometers. It's a lot more climbing, though.
It's way harder.
Is stage 20 then not maybe the one where nail in the coffin comes? It's a lot longer, but there's less climbing. It's interesting, right? It's a dynamic between the two differences. Where do we see the vulnerabilities of Del Toro? For me, it's just in general the long climbs.
Yeah, I think the La Finestra just doesn't suit him. He's giving 8 kilos to Simon Yates and Carapaz, and it's a 1 hour climb at 9%. And then with gravel, it's even the gradient's effectively higher. But does his style of riding suit that more compared to Yates and Carapaz, who are out of the saddle guys? Does a seated climber like Del Toro, is that more efficient on the gravel? We're going to find out. He's got to make it there first. I think clearly now the hierarchy is Carapaz is the attacker. Del Toro is going to defend. Maybe even he lets Carapaz have some leash if he goes early on stages. He did that today. And Yates is the third in the hierarchy at the moment, because indeed Del Toro dropped him today, but Carapaz was the strongest on Mortarolo area.
Yes, Yates is the third in the hierarchy, but on those stage 19 and 20 parkours, I'm not sure that will be the case. Because then I tend to lean towards, well, it's difficult to lean towards Yates on Colle del Finestre. It's the climb where he lost 26 minutes in 2018. But you know what I mean, right? Those type of climbs on paper, you'd put Simon Yates above Del Toro.
Yeah, in theory, he should be better based on what we saw yesterday on San Valentino. But that has a lot of altitude gain, of course. But it's one categorized, one big climb. There's some rolling terrain beforehand, and then a short descent, and then the kick up to Sestriere. So UAE also have the strongest team here. Micah, Yates, McNulty are all good, and they got the strongest climbing support. So it'll be interesting to see how they play these stages. And I think the breakaway is going to be crucial there. But yeah, this Giro is not over. It's still open. Derek G, I struggle to see the path to him winning.
Yeah. Podium's possible.
Podium's possible. He needs one of the 3 above to have a problem on 19 or 20.
Pellizzari?
No. He had that you ain't him moment today.
I do think he can podium, Pellizzari. And I think his team being present and him trying to attack and him having confidence to attack, because he doesn't necessarily have much to lose at this point. It's like Pellizzari didn't expect to be in this position, so anything that he gets is a win at the end of the Giro. So his team hitting it all out might help EF to make the race hard, which might actually benefit Carapaz in the long run.
Who is going to make it hard, though? Because I think Ineos are done. Ineos are not going to do it anymore. And Hamilton and Castro is Aaron's been lost like a lot of time today. He didn't have it. He crashed yesterday. A team has to make the stage 19. Del Toro won't just collapse.
Yeah, but
with everybody riding around.
If you're Visma Lisa bike, for example, then you also got to think, okay, right now I'm still behind 2 riders in GC, so you can't just think about, oh, I need to try and beat Carapaz at the end of the stage. No, Isaac Del Toro is also still ahead. Just like UAE leadership said yesterday, Isaac is leader. So you got to try and counter that. And in doing so, if you assume that large, long mountain stages with big mountains affect Del Toro more than Salmon Yates, which you must assume, then you go towards stage 19 and 20 with that idea. So Visma Lisa bike might actually make the race harder. But in doing so, they might also set up EF.
I think they got to join forces. Because
but that can backfire to Salmon Yates.
Both teams are not strong enough on their own to make a stage hard. They needed to piggyback off Ineos' work on the stage yesterday. So, like, Steinhauser was solid today. Like, all their guys are solid. Cepeda's probably the exception. Cepeda can make it really hard at the pointy end of things on a steep climb.
He was good on Mortirolo.
He was good. Yeah, he's been solid all Giro. But yeah, it's going to be... I honestly don't know what can happen. And you never count out UAE, never count out in, Del Toro. Just because he got dropped yesterday, that doesn't mean he lost the Giro. Someone has to make him lose the Giro, and that won't happen just by hoping he collapses on one of the stages. You have to make... Like yesterday, it happened because there was a hard pace all day, and he got attacked a million times. And then he eventually cracked. Not the first time, not the second time, but eventually he cracked. Tomorrow's stage, though, is it a sprint? Is it a breakaway stage? 144 Ks from Morbegno to Cesano Maderno. It is hilly in the middle, 7.6 Ks at 6% in the first 40 Ks. Then some rolling terrain, then a 9K, 4.4% climb, the last hill's about 66 Ks from the finish, where there's the Red Bull bonus sprint, and then it's absolutely flat to the finish. I think this is a sprint.
I'm glad you said it first this time around. It's a sprint. It's always going to be a sprint. The reason Asgreen won that stage, we can love his attack and confidence and the way he ended up winning that stage. I love that Asgreen won that stage, but he won because half the peloton crashed.
Yeah, it helped that it was raining in the circuit, for sure.
So this is going to be a sprint unless half the peloton crashes.
I think, and there's no hill here as well to break, like late hill to break up the chase. Where Domestiques drop. So it's, to me, it looks like Alpecin, Visma, Sam Bennett still here. I mean,
you gonna pick him one more time?
Nah, I'll pick Groves.
I pick Coy.
Okay, there we go. We think it's going to be a sprint. It's going to be all about trying to get that break gone before the climbing starts. If the break isn't gone and it goes on the climb, maybe then Van Aert and Edward Planckaert and Dries de Bont start doing Belgian stuff. This is the Belgian break, no? This is the Belgian day. Stage 18 of
but there's
Grand
too many.
Tour.
Dries de Bont, the Belgian day. He's got Bennett as a sprinter, which, to be honest, at this point, I would like them to hedge their bets and see the Bont go and breakaway and Bennett go from the peloton, put pressure on the other leadouts that way. So fair, but there's too many teams that won the sprint. And let's be honest, Patrick, why do we keep having confidence in like sprinter teams sending riders in the breakaway instead of going for their 1% chance sprinter? We both know they're going to go for the sprinter. Moschetti, Q46.5 will win the sprint.
Yeah, will he survive this? Yeah, he should. It's not that hard.
If he doesn't, he might as well rename himself officially to Maresco. Or to Simon de Heers.
Simon de Heers, yeah. Okay. Well, we should have a transition. It is a transition stage tomorrow, whether it's a break or a sprint. And then we're back on Friday with stage 19 when the GC action recommences. Before we find out who's going to be wearing the Maglia Rosa in Rome on Sunday, hope you enjoyed today's recap. Del Toro strikes back. Check out pillperformance.shop and we'll see you tomorrow. Ciao, ciao.